Welcome back to the deep dive. We're pushing on with anatomy and physiology, picking right up from our last chat about the autonomic nervous system's basic setup. The two-neuron structure, the neurotransmitters involved.
Yep, and today we're using Mr. Hostler's lecture notes for Chapter 12 as our guide, which, as you know, draw from the human body in health and illness. These notes really try to connect the dots for you as nursing students, linking structure to function. It's all about building that clinical thinking, getting ready for practice, and the NCLEX.
Exactly. So today what we really want to do is first nail down on what the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems actually do in the body, like organ by organ, and crucially why they do it. What's the point?
Right, the physiological reason behind it all.
And second, we need to tackle the language of autonomic pharmacology. Those key terms for drugs that either copy or block these systems. Super important stuff.
Absolutely. And think of these systems, sympathetic and parasympathetic, as different modes for your body. Sympathetic's that fight or flight mode, think stress, action, getting energy ready now.
While parasympathetic is more rest and digest, or sometimes called feed and breed, it's about saving energy, recovery, routine stuff. Your body tends to lean one way or the other, depending on the situation. Very efficient.
It really is.
Now, before we jump into the organs, let's just quickly recap the signals. Remember, the main neurotransmitters are acetylcholine and norepinephrine.
Right. Acetylcholine, that's from cholinergic fibers. It hits nicotinic receptors at the first synapse in the ganglia for both systems. But then for the parasympathetic system, it also hits muscarinic receptors right on the target organs, heart, gut, places like that.
Okay, and norepinephrine. That's the main one for the sympathetic system, released by adrenergic fibers. It acts on alpha and beta receptors on those target organs.
Exactly. So when we talk about drugs, they're often designed to interact with these specific receptors. Knowing which receptor on which organ, that's the key.
Got it. So let's put this into practice. Organ by organ. Let's start with the heart. Sympathetic stimulation, what happens and why?
Okay, fight or flight. Your heart needs to work harder, right? So sympathetic activation speeds up the heart rate and makes it contract more forcefully. Why? To pump more blood, more oxygen to your muscles and brain for running or fighting, basically.
Makes sense. And parasympathetic.
That's the calming influence, mostly through the vagus nerve. It slows the heart rate down, conserves energy when you don't need that high output.
Okay, lungs. When you're stressed, need more air.
You bet.
Yeah.
Sympathetic causes bronchodilation, widens those airways, let more air in, maximize oxygen.
Like opening the taps.
Pretty much. Parasympathetic does the opposite. Slight constriction, just normal, calm breathing.
Rise. Sympathetic makes the pupils dilate.
Yep. Lets in more light, helps you see better, spot danger, especially if the light's dim or changing quickly. Parasympathetic constricts them back down.
All right, digestive system. This is a big one for showing the trade-off. Sympathetic really slows it down.
Definitely. Blood's needed elsewhere, like your muscles. Digestion is not the priority in a crisis. Parasympathetic, that ramps it all up. Movement, enzyme secretion, everything for processing food when you're relaxed.
And the urinary tract follows a similar pattern. Sympathetic relaxes the bladder, tightens the sphincter.
Yeah, prevents inconvenient interruptions during fight or flight. Parasympathetic does the opposite. Contracts the bladder, relaxes the sphincter, lets you go when it's safe.
Blood vessels are interesting, too. Sympathetic constricts some.
Right, like in the skin and the gut, places not essential for immediate action. But it dilates vessels in your skeletal muscles.
Shunting the blood where it's needed most. Smart.
Very strategic. Parasympathetic doesn't have as much direct control over most blood vessels, but just calming everything down generally lowers resistance.
Salivary glands. Sympathetic gives you that dry mouth feeling, thick saliva.
Saving fluids isn't the top concern then. Parasympathetic gives you the watery saliva you need for eating, speaking.
And lastly, sexual function actually uses both systems for different phases. Sympathetic for orgasm ejaculation, parasympathetic for erection lubrication.
Seeing it laid out like this, organ by organ, really shows how the body switches modes, allocating resources for action versus recovery. It's quite elegant.
It is. And this leads us perfectly into the pharmacology, because if you understand these effects, you can understand how drugs work. And learning these terms mimic, block, is absolutely vital for you in clinical settings, and yes, for the NCLEX.
Couldn't agree more. These terms basically tell you what the drug does.
Let's take sympathomimetic.
For sympathetic, sympathomimetic for mimicking.
Yep.
So it copies the fight or flight response.
Right. Usually by activating those adrenergic receptors, the alpha or beta ones, or maybe boosting norepinephrine, so the effects increase heart rate, maybe bronchodilation, vasoconstriction, depends on the specific drug and receptor.
And why use them?
Well, maybe to support low blood pressure, help someone with asthma breathe easier, or like in decongestants.
Okay, then sympatholytic. Dethlytic means block. Exactly. Blocks these sympathetic actions, often by blocking alpha or beta receptors. So you'd see the opposite effects, maybe lower heart rate, less forceful contraction, vasodilation to lower blood pressure.
Like beta blockers for hypertension.
Precisely. Or for certain heart rhythm problems, even anxiety sometimes.
Okay, switching sides. Parasympathomimetic.
Mimicking the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. These drugs usually stimulate the muscarinic receptors, so think increased gut movement, more saliva, promoting urination, maybe for dry mouth, constipation, helping someone empty their bladder if they have retention,
And the fourth main one, parasympatholytic.
blocking parasympathetic effects. These are also called anticholinergics because they block acetylcholine at those muscarinic receptors. The effects often look sympathetic because you're taking away the brake.
So increased heart rate, dry mouth, maybe relaxed airways.
Exactly. You might use these pre-surgery to dry up secretions, treat a very slow heart rate, or sometimes in conditions like COPD.
And sometimes you hear terms related specifically to the vagus nerve, right? Vagomimetic, vagolytic.
Yes, since the vagus is such a major parasympathetic nerve. Vagomimetic mimics the vagus, slows the heart, boosts digestion. Vagolytic inhibits the vagus, so increases heart rate, reduces secretions. Atropine is a classic vagolytic drug.
It really does all circle back to knowing which chemical signal, acetylcholine or norepinephrine, hits which receptor, nicotinic, muscarinic, alpha, beta, and where that receptor is located.
That's the foundation. Receptor location and type predict the effect. Understand that, and the drug actions make much more sense.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone through the specific actions of the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, organ by organ, seeing how they oppose each other to manage the body's resources, and we've defined those key drug terms: sympathomimetic, sympatholytic, parasympathomimetic, parasympatholytic, plus the vagal terms.
All based on mimicking or blocking the actions at specific receptors. And maybe think about that challenge case from Mr. Hostler's notes, that pre-surgery patient getting a drug that speeds up the heart and dries secretions. What system's being blocked? What kind of drug is it? Which receptors?
Right, inhibiting parasympathetic, so it's parasympatholytic,
Yeah.
blocking muscarinic receptors.
Exactly. Working through those connections, that's how you build real clinical understanding, moving beyond just memorizing facts.
Keep practicing matching those organ effects with the drug terminology. It's absolutely fundamental. Thanks for diving deep with us today.